بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوكل عليه. نعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد. Indeed, all the praises and thanks and glorification belongs to Allah. We seek His help, we ask His forgiveness, we put our trust in Him, and we ask for His guidance. Indeed, the one that Allah has guided, no one can send astray. And the one that Allah has sent astray, no one can guide. We bear witness that nothing deserves to be worshipped except Allah, and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is His servant and messenger. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. O believers, of those who have acquired Iman, اتقوا الله, have taqwa of Allah, be conscious of Allah, be aware of Allah. Put Allah in all your affairs. In other words, consider Allah in all your affairs. ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Do not die except you're in a state of belief, of Iman. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. O people, O mankind, have taqwa of Allah, the reverend Lord, the one who has created you from a single soul. From that soul, He created His mate. From those two, He created men and women. Have taqwa of Allah, be conscious of Allah, and be conscious of the wounds that bore you, or your close family relations. And have taqwa of Allah, the one in whom you seek your mutual rights. When you wrong each other, and you want to take your right from each other, remember this should be done through the Sharia of Allah. And indeed, Allah is watcher over all of you. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم يغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطيع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. O believers, have taqwa of Allah and say a word that is correct and truthful and to the point. Allah will improve your situation and forgive your sins. Indeed, those who obey Allah and the Messenger have attained or will attain great success. I want to go through the tafseer of Surah At-Takwir. Right? It is a surah that highlights the tremendous chaos that will occur on the Day of Judgment, or towards the Day of Judgment. Right? The word Takbir itself has several connotations and meanings. Right? It's to do with something being rolled up. For example, when you're putting on your turban is a long piece of cloth, and you start wrapping it around your head. And when you wrap it around your head, you notice that your head, or the part of your head which is visible, becomes smaller and smaller and smaller until your entire head is covered and there's no more head you can see. So that is the context in which the word is used in the surah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا الشمس كورت. إذا الشمس كورت. Again, when you read the Quran in general, in terms of normal speech, it is done without tajweed. You don't have to read the tajweed when you are just reading the Quran. But when you recite Quran for salah, you have to apply tajweed. So I will say it as we say in normal Arabic speech. إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ. All these verses that we will recite, about 6 or 7 verses, all begin in the same way. إِذَا. إذا is like an adjective. It's like an adverb in Arabic, adverb of time. When. But there are two whens. In English, there are two whens. In other words, you can say when you do something, or when I did something. The same word when is used for the future and the past. So when you go to the store, buy this. When I was in kindergarten, this happened. So it has reference to future and past events. In Arabic, has one connotation. It refers to something in the future, but the form of the verb that comes with it is a past tense. In other words, it is saying that that which will come in the future will definitely come in the future. It's speaking about it in the future as if it happened already. And this is just the style of Arabic language, balagha, eloquence, a way of saying something, a way of emphasizing something. So, إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ, when the sun is kuwirat, is made to disappear, let's say, gradually, right? And that could mean, and the Mufassirun have given, the people of Tafseer have given different meanings to this. I mean, how it happens, Allah knows best, we don't know, scientifically, it's not explained, but the general idea is given, that the sun, or the light of the sun, will gradually decrease, to the point where there's no more sun, so to speak. Whether it's going to be covered, or it's going to be eaten up by itself, Allah knows best. But the idea is that the light of the sun will disappear. Now, all these whens are referring to things that will happen, but in a very revolutionary manner. In other words, the way we see things normally, naturally, will be turned upside down. I mean, if you, a couple of surahs before that talk about the same kind of phenomenon. For example, in Surah Al-Abasa wa Tawalla, فَإِذَا جَاءَتِ الصَّاخَّةُ الصَّاخَّةُ. This is the second blow of the trumpet on the Day of Judgment. The second blow where all people will be gathered in the mahshar, in the place of the gathering, for judgment. إِذَا جَاءَتِ الصَّاخَّةُ. And what happens there? Allah mentions the normal relation we have with amongst people. The brother running away from his brother, running away from his mother and his father and his wife and children. But in this surah, Takwir, Allah talks about things on a higher level. Not just the normal relation between people, but things at a higher level. And there's a hierarchy. Allah begins by talking about Shams. Shams, and you have to understand the context of these verses. Because I'm not sure if you've lived in a rural area, in a country setting, but in a country setting, sun and moon and stars are very important. They're very beautiful to behold, there's no doubt. Just look at the sky with your naked eyes. It's a wonder. It's a beautiful thing if you haven't experienced it. And of course, travelers at night. My grandfather was a fisherman, and all these people in that village, they use the stars at night to direct them, to tell them how far out they were from the coast, or how close they were to the shore, the mountainous part of the shore, the cliffs, to avoid running into the cliffs. So, and in a similar way, the Arabs of that time, they lived in the desert, and at night, of course, the desert is like it's very dark, but look up and see what happens. It's a very beautiful setting, and it had meanings for them as well, as far as giving light and directions, and as far as telling time, because certain stars, come up rise at a certain time. The morning star, the evening star, they all have meanings for people at that time. That was their technology. So people were accustomed to this normal appearance of things. And this Surah Takwir tells you everything opposite to what was understood to be normal. So a shams that we see, the sun we see giving light, it's been there for so many years, thousands of years, and now all of a sudden it's losing its light, its effect. And one of the commentators made a comment that this surah, all these 6 or 7 verses, that they're very harsh in the sense that they describe a very severe revolution, very intense revolution of the norm. And this is meant for those people that are die-hard disbelievers. And this is like the last chance of, let's say, convincing them of the error they were in and of the truth of the Muhammad ﷺ, of the message he brought. So the verses are very intense for the people at that time. Maybe for people now, it may not be so intense, but for those people at that time, these are very intense verses. So, and that Shams al-Kubirat. And then, and notice that the way the sentence is, again, this is balagha in Arabic, the noun Shams, sun, is feminine, and it comes first. The normal sentence in Arabic is the verbal sentence where the verb is first. You know, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. The verb is first. You know, but in these sentences, the noun is first. And again, this is to draw attention to the importance of that thing that you're talking about. Right? Again, it's more emphasis. Right? إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ. And also, all these verbs we're talking about, they're in the passive voice. In other words, it's like saying, Moses killed an Egyptian, or Moses killed an Egyptian. All right. So here we have an active formed verb of the sentence. Moses, the noun, is known, and what did he do? He killed somebody. That's also known. But if we say an Egyptian was killed, so here where the emphasis is on the action itself, not on the person, but on the action. An Egyptian was killed. Who killed the Egyptian? It doesn't matter. It's not important. What's important is that an Egyptian was killed. So all these verses again are of that nature. إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ. When the sun is kuwirat. It's not saying, someone made the shams kuwirat. I mean, kawarat the shams. That someone made the sun like this. No, it's said. It is explained as when the sun is kuwirat. When the sun is turned upside down in the sense that it loses light and its normal function. So again, this is emphasis on the word itself, because people disbelieve Muhammad ﷺ. I mean, he is the messenger, and he had a message. So they disbelieved and they rejected Muhammad ﷺ, right? So they rejected the messenger, and now Allah is focusing on the message, because people are like this sometimes. If you know of a certain person, and you have a certain attitude towards that person, then it doesn't matter what that person is saying. You will, because you already had a certain opinion about a person, you will reject the person's message. Because it's coming from that person. Well, the Arabs, they didn't have an argument against Prophet ﷺ because they knew he was As-Sadiq al-Amin. They knew he was As-Sadiq al-Amin. He was a truthful one and trustworthy. They knew that before he was made a prophet. But they rejected him, on other basis, and then they rejected his message. But now Allah is focusing on the message, not the messenger. So all of these verses are turned like the other way. They're the passive voice. إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ. وَإِذَا النُّجُومُ انْكَدَرَتْ. And when the stars are inkaderat, when they are made to slowly lose their light as well. So, again, it falls from the sun, because the sun's light is reflected by the stars, by the planets. But in this case here, the Nujum could also refer to the other planets or the celestial bodies. But of course, as we know, stars have their own, the sun is a star, so the stars do have their own light. But it could also refer to the heavenly bodies in general. And when they start losing their light as well, or start falling in that sense. إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ وَإِذَا النُّجُومُ انْكَدَرَتْ وَإِذَا الْجِبَالُ سُيِّرَتْ وَإِذَا الْجِبَالُ سُيِّرَتْ. And when the mountains are made to move slowly, like softly, when the mountains are made to move. In other words, the mountains we know, as Allah explained in other verses, they are, they're held firmly in earth, in the ground. They're held firmly, right? And we know that, for example, the Himalayas is so many, like maybe 10 kilometers tall. We know that it also extends downward by almost the same height, the same depth, to hold it rigid and firm. And that's what we normally see, because in that time, mountains were considered, you're in a desert, in flat land, and then you have mountains. Mountains had a very different position. Then they weren't like just mountains. They had meaning. You know, it was a sign of Allah's, you know, control of the earth, and the way He had formed the earth such that these things were there for a certain purpose. So, and the mountains are made to move. So very firm mountains are now moving slowly in front of their eyes. Again, this is a revolution. It's turned everything upside down. You know, people's notion of what things are normally are being flipped. وَإِذَا الْجِبَالُ سُيِّرَتْ وَإِذَا الْعِشَارُ عُطِّلَتْ. And when the ishar, the camels that are 10 months pregnant, because the gestation period for camel, I think, is like 12 to 13 months. So when the ishar, I mean the camels that are 10 months pregnant, are left alone without a shepherd. Again, this is like almost inconsiderable, or not something that could normally happen in Arabian times, amongst Arabs in those days. Why? Because camels were a sign of wealth, and especially like pregnant camel, you know, which is at 10 months, almost about to give birth. You know, which this means that number one, the person's wealth will be increased, and number two, there'll be a lot of milk. You know, and to the Arabs in the desert, this is a big deal. I mean, you know, milk and dates were their staple diet. You know, so this is a big deal. And man was considered wealthy if he had a lot of camels. You know, so describing things, and of course when a camel is, you know, is 10 months pregnant, they would spend a lot of time taking care of it, because they want to make sure that, you know, the camel gives birth. You know, so for a camel to be 10 months pregnant and to be left alone, unattended, without a shepherd, this is not acceptable. This is a big deal for the Arabs in those days. You know, again, the normal things are being turned around, twisted around. وَإِذَا الْوُحُوشُ حُشِرَتْ وَإِذَا الْوُحُوشُ حُشِرَتْ. And when the wuhush, the wild animals, are forced to come together. Now, you know, put a lion and a leopard do not stick together, do not go together. They're enemies. You know, the lion's bigger, will try to kill the leopard. The leopard is bigger than the cheetah, will try to kill the cheetah. And it goes on like that. These are all wild animals with their own characteristics. And they have their own habitat and their own ways of living. But at this time, they're brought together. In these days, when they're brought together, they're by force. Not because they want to come together, but by force. Husharat, as opposed to Jumi'at. Right? They're brought together. Husharat. Right? And of course, you know, this is something, it's not the norm. You know, it's against the norm, and it's unthinkable that this could happen, that wild animals are being brought together. وَإِذَا الْبِحَارُ سُجِّرَتْ وَإِذَا الْبِحَارُ سُجِّرَتْ. And when the Bahr means sea, or ocean, but in Arabic there are two plurals, Abhur and Bihar. Abhur is a plural of seas, but it's a plural of small quantity, as opposed to a plural of big quantity. So in Arabic there are two plurals, plural of small quantity and plural of a big quantity. Here, Bihar is used for big quantity. So when the oceans are brought together, right? That's one explanation given by the Tafseer. When the oceans are brought together, or when the oceans are set ablaze. When the oceans are set ablaze, all right? and one interpretation is that the water of the ocean itself will be the fuel of the ocean, and it'll be set ablaze. It'll be you know, huge big fire, so to speak. وَإِذَا الْبِحَارُ سُجِّرَتْ وَإِذَا النُّفُوسُ زُوِّجَتْ. And when the souls are paired together. Again, the word nufus, in Arabic, anfus and nufus. Anfus comes from nafs. Nafs means, has several meanings, but let's stick to the most popular meaning, which means soul or self, a person, nafs, right? And of course, the anfus is a plural of that, plural of small number, and the nufus is a plural of big number, of the same word, nafs. So when the nufus are brought together, they're paired together. Umar, radiallahu anhu, his tafsir of this was that the like souls, like people are brought together. In other words, the good people are paired together, and the bad people are paired together. Right? This seems to be the most popular tafsir. وَإِذَا النُّفُوسُ زُوِّجَتْ. Another alim said that this means that it's when the soul and the body, when the ruh and the body are brought together. The ruh and the body of a person, because we know when a person dies, the ruh is taken out and it's placed in barzakh, in some temporary holding place. But in the day of judgment, they're going to be together again. So one scholar says the meaning of this is that the soul of the person, the ruh, is brought back to the person, and they're united together. وإذا النفوس زوجت وإذا الموءودة سئلت وإذا الموءودة سئلت. And when the young baby girl who was buried alive is asked. Now the Arabs in those days, they had some very terrible social practices, some very terrible parts of their culture, and they had some good parts. For example, being kind to the guest. You know, you would go to the person with traveling. You comes to the village. No one knows him whatsoever, but they would honor the person by giving him, let's say, 3 days of food and water, and food and drink and shelter. After 3 days, he's no longer a guest per se. This is the Arab tradition, right? They were known for generosity, you know, honoring the guest, and it's something that Islam kept because the Prophet Islam told us to do that. So parts of their culture were good, and parts were very bad. And of course, Islam is about doing good. So all the evil and the bad parts of their culture were eradicated by Islam. One of those things was the concept of a girl baby. They did believe about a girl baby, and they think that, you know, it is a shame for a man to have a girl baby. In other words, having a girl baby is proof that he's not man enough to have a son, to have a boy. So having a girl baby was a shame amongst the Arabs, you know, which is kind of stupid, because if you're going to consider your girl children as shame and kill them, who are your sons marry? I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's a very stupid concept. The girl babies are a shame. So what a woman would do when she's about to give birth, she would dig her hole and give birth over that hole. And if the baby was a girl, she would heap the sand on the girl and kill the girl, kill the baby, kill the infant. Or, you know, the husband would take the baby away, you know, and go out somewhere and bury it. Just bury the screaming toddler, infant. If it's a boy, of course, they would keep it, all right? And if it weren't done at that time, then they would wait until the girl is about, let's say, 5, 6, 7, 8, and tell her, well, you know, and ask the mother to dress her up in her most beautiful dresses. They make her like very attractively dressed, and tell her that she's going to be taken to see her relatives. And then, of course, the father would have already dug a hole in the desert, and then would take her there and tell her to look down to see that animal or see that thing down there. And while she's bending over looking down, he would push her into the hole and heap the sand on her, and she'll be buried alive. Terrible thing, and Islam, of course, stopped that. So, you know, but the point here, and when the child was buried alive and is asked, notice, I mean, there are a couple of points in this verse here. Usually, when a crime is committed, you question the criminal about it for the most part, because that person is being accused of it. But in this case, who's being questioned? The girl who was buried alive is being questioned. The victim is being questioned here. You know, and the idea is that and she's questioned about she's questioned about, you know, for which small sin, because then there are many words for sin. You know, then is one of the words in Arabic for sin, but it refers to like the smallest sin. So she's going to be asked, for what small sin were you killed? And the idea is that of course Allah knows why she was killed, but it's being asked so that the criminal, the person who did that, is going to be punished without being asked about his crime. In other words, she's being asked about what was done to her, you know, and then that person did it, the person who helped, the person who dug the hole, you know, and the person who did it, the burying, they're going to be punished for that, because they're guilty of that crime. وإذا الموءودة سئلت بأي ذنب قتلت. Okay. And then, of course, you can see the hierarchy. Allah began by saying the Shams, you know, and then from the sun, Allah went to describe the Nujum, the stars, the other stars, or planets. And then from there, Allah went to the Jabal. Allah came down now to the earth level, the mountains. And then from the mountains, Allah brought the finger, and now you're using your imagination, you're being brought to the camels, something closer to home, the mountains and the camels. And then from the camels, Allah went to the Wahush that live in the mountains, for example, because in those days, or the desert, because Hamza was a lion hunter, and he was in a desert hunting lion, so there were wuhush in the desert as well as in the mountains, right? And then from the wuhush, from the animals in the mountains, or the wild animals, Allah went to the bihar, the seas, water around you. And then from the bihar, Allah went to the nufus, people. And then for people in general, Allah went to the little girl you killed. Close, Allah is getting closer and closer to home. In other words, He's taking the kafir. Well, these are meant to these are da'wah. The Prophet Islam is made to recite these, to the kuffar in general, taking them from something very far away, coming down to something closer and closer to home, so they can feel the essence of the message. And then, having said all that, Allah talks about the suhuf. وَإِذَا الصُّحْفُ نُشِرَتْ وَإِذَا الصُّحْفُ نُشِرَتْ. The suhuf has, the word suhuf has two meanings here. We speak about the Suhuf Ibrahim, Suhuf Ibrahim and Musa, the scriptures of Ibrahim and Musa. This is the Sharia, the book given, or the Sharia given to Ibrahim Al-Islam and Musa. But here the Suhuf has a different meaning. It refers to the scrolls of your deeds. Because as you know, angels are recording what you do. Alright? Al-Kiram Al-Katibin. They are Al-Kiram Al-Katibun. They're recording what you do. Right? So what they record is in the Suhuf. Is in the scroll, the book, or what do you want to call it? So when the suhuf are nushrat, when the books are laid open, the books of your deeds are laid open for all to see. When the suhuf nushrat, when the suhuf nushrat, when the sama'a kushitat, when the sama'a kushitat. And when again Allah refers to, it goes back to the sama, the sky. The sky, as we normally understand, is the color of the sky is a reflection of what's on the earth. So if you look at the sky over the horizon, you'll see that it looks kind of bluish, or some of the color of blue. It's a reflection of what's on the earth. But here, that's not push and thought. That's not push and thought. When the sky is made to look reddish, and this might be a reflection of what comes after the other verse is that before actually, that the bihar, the seas, will be set ablaze. So the seas are set ablaze, of course the sky will reflect that redness. Right? Where the smell of push thought. وَإِذَا الْجَحِيمُ سُعِرَتْ وَإِذَا الْجَحِيمُ سُعِرَتْ. And when hellfire is made into a blazing inferno. وَإِذَا الْجَحِيمُ سُعِرَتْ. Right? Of course, we learn in a different verse that يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ. Allah says, "O believers, save yourself and your family from hellfire. Its fuel is people and stones." Right? So here we're talking about Jahannam now being this raging inferno. Again, this is to get the reader's attention to the trials and tribulations and the horror of this day. وَإِذَا الْجَنَّةُ أُزْلِفَتْ. And when Jannah is brought close to the believers as a way of honoring the believer. There are different ways to refer to something being brought close to you. Allah could have said, وَإِذَا الْجَنَّةُ قُرِّبَتْ. And when Jannah is brought close, already means close. But Allah didn't use that word. Allah used uzlifat. Because uzlifat has the idea of honoring the person with something good. For example, Yusuf al-Salam was brought close to Fir'aun by Fir'aun giving him that high position. Alright, so he was being honored and being close to him at the same time. Likewise for the believers, Allah will honor them on the day of judgment.